And we've come to day 3 of the Eco-Mobility Congress in Kaohsiung. And this morning, we will be exploring the issue of towards integrated and shared mobility. We have a panel of distinguished speakers, but first I would like to introduce the moderator of this session, Deputy Secretary General of ICLEI, South Asia Secretariat, New Delhi, India, Emani Kumar, to moderate the session. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Kumar.
Good morning. No response, huh? Good morning. Yeah, very good. I thought the people are all sleeping. Yesterday we had a very good banquet and good music, I think. And good to see that so many people have come back here to listen to the presentations very much in the morning. We heard eco-mobility issues, sustainable cities. Now we are going to talk about integrated and shared mobility. You have seen that shared, livable, shared, and intelligent. The shared is the main point which we are going to have a discussion today on that. We have two very distinguished speakers, keynote speakers today in the morning. One is the mayor. He himself has come all the way from Netherlands. So I'm so happy to see him here and talk about what his city is doing that. So may I invite our first keynote speaker, Mayor Jan van Zanen. Can I request you, sir, please come and sit onto the dais. I will, maybe 2 minutes, I'll just give you the floor. And we have the second speaker, Ms. Robin Chase. She is the founder for the ZipCar, and she came all the way from US. So I request her to please come and sit onto the dais. Okay, before I hand it over to the mayor, I just want to ask you a few questions, maybe to warm you up first. How many of you own a car? How many of you in the audience own a car? Can you raise your hands? How many have you own a car? You own a car? Very few people. I'm so happy to see that. How many want to buy a car? Oh, that is also very few people want to buy a car. I'm so happy to see this response. You know that a lot of issues, the greenhouse gas emissions, maybe Robin will talk about that, is one of the major issues of the world which we are talking about. And transportation is one of the key contributor to this greenhouse gas emissions. And I come from a city of New Delhi, which used to be one of the most polluted city in the world. Fortunately or unfortunately, whatever I want to say that, it has now slipped to 4th or 5th rank in the world as the most polluted city. But a lot of pollutions again. I know that there are a lot of burning happens, of the open burning happens in the city, but transportation is another major issue which is creating a lot of problems to the cities. So what should we do that? We have talked about eco-mobility, we have talked about sustainable cities, we talked about major innovations, and we are now going to hear from the mayor who comes from the city, which is the, I heard that city is one of the great bicycle city, which I was also told that the mayor, sometimes he uses bicycle to go to his office. I was so happy to see that, hear that. I have not seen that, maybe I have heard that particular information. So before, we are going to invite the mayor to speak what he has done in his city, and what he is planning to do in his city as the mayor. Just to introduce the mayor, has a law degree from VU University of Amsterdam and also from Cornell University, USA. And he did his military services as an officer at the Dutch Royal Air Force and subsequently filled the position as a legal and executive secretary for National Employers Association. Mayor was appointed as the alderman of the Finance and Economic Affairs, Public Space and Monuments in 1998, and which he remained for 7 years in that position. And he was the national chairman of the VVD and also the mayor of Amsterdam in between 2005 to 2013. Since January 1st, 2014, he is mayor of Utrecht. And since June 3rd, 2015, he is also the chairman of the Association of Netherlands of Municipalities. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Dear host of the city of Kaohsiung, dear colleagues from all over the world, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself. My name is Jan van Zanen, mayor of the city of Utrecht in the very heart of the Netherlands. And it's a great honor for me to be in Kaohsiung again. I still remember my first visit very well. Then, in 2010, I was mayor of the city of Amstelveen in the Amsterdam area. I remember the excellent high-speed rail in which we traveled to Kaohsiung. I remember the National Stadium, the celebration of the Dragon Boat Festival at Love River, and the view of the city from the Tantex Sky Tower. And I especially remember the fresh lychees that were offered to me. Great to be here again. And even greater, ladies and gentlemen, it is the honor to be allowed to speak to you at the beginning of the third day of our Congress. And I think it's a good idea to introduce to you, first of all, briefly, the city that I represent with love and conviction. Birthplace of Miffy and Rietveld, certainly, but also a city with roots in Roman and medieval times, with a beautiful city center and 3,000 historical monuments as a legacy, crowned by the country's most important religious buildings, the much-loved Dom Church and Dom Tower. An old city, but also very young and dynamic. One-fifth of the population are students at one of our universities, making Utrecht universities the country's best, making our working population the country's highest educated, and the region of Utrecht one of Europe's most competitive. And maybe in your eyes, with its about 345,000 inhabitants, a rather small city, but it's the heart of one of the world's most densely populated countries, and sees itself no less than other cities faced with urban challenges. And I already mentioned the location of our city in the heart, the center of the Netherlands, which, as a consequence, the status of Utrecht as the country's national hub for rail, shipping, and road traffic. And last but not least, as one of the world's great bicycle cities. Being also, as the country's fourth city, the most rapidly growing one, with development areas to the east, to the center, and to the west. Traditionally, financial and business services are our region's core businesses. But after the last economic recession, we have become more and more aware of the knowledge and creativity present in our city and region, the presence of institutions and business companies in the field of healthy urban living. A quarter of the jobs in our region are related to this medical cluster of cure, care, and consultancy. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to continue my speech by depicting an episode from our history with mobility, the subject of our Congress, just to show the background to our choice for healthy urban living now. About a half a century ago, many people in Utrecht agreed that the expanding city needed more space for car traffic. City government even proposed a plan to fill in the old canals surrounding the historical center, to create again space for a ring road. Broad traffic roads for cars were planned straight across the historical center, connecting it with the newly constructed suburbs. A revolutionary covered shopping mall was planned to replace the old central station area. And the Jaarbeurs trade fair organization was happy with its new location near the city's heart. There were many protests those days from Utrecht citizens, but also from national government. Most of the plans were eventually rejected, and nowadays we're grateful for that, since it means that most of our city's historical attractiveness and basic qualities have been preserved. Only one part of the plans was eventually carried out, the large shopping mall near Central Station. And during the following years, this proved to be a tremendous commercial success, lifting up also the existing shopping areas in the historical inner city. And now, this shopping mall, originally dating from 1974, has become, in a modernized form, part of the new center, the almost entirely renewed area around Central Station. The Jaarbeurs Trade Fair organization is still happy with its central location, but now because Central Station is so near. And it's the simple truth, ladies and gentlemen, that only half a century ago, the city of Utrecht seriously and honestly believed to create a livable city by accommodating car traffic. And even in our city center, where human activity concentrates and consequently the challenge of mobility culminates. It's an experience that enables us to understand the pain of other cities struggling with the same dilemmas. Nowadays, the city of Utrecht is still developing rapidly. Within 15 years, the population of our city will have increased by another 20%. Still more and more functions will have to be concentrated in a limited space. And all the more limited because the city of Utrecht has decided to accommodate its expansion within the city boundaries. A decision, you will understand, with far-reaching consequences for a city that is the heart of Dutch water, rail and road infrastructure and the heart of the country's economically fastest growing region. And how do we create good access in this more and more concentrated city? How do we improve air quality, reduce noise pollution, create more attractive public spaces? And how do we achieve our goal of climate neutrality in 2030? Summarizing, how do we create a healthy urban environment? And that's the ultimate question, and that's why eco-mobility is so crucial, and that's why I came back to Taiwan again. We firmly believe that urban development strategies should make people happier, our environment healthier, and our economy more sustainable. We are convinced that for any such strategy, health should be and make in the center and should make the difference. and leading us to the consequence, ladies and gentlemen, to give public health priority in all fields of policy. Urging residents and other stakeholders in the city and surrounding region to do the same. Forging partnerships to do their part in creating a healthier place to live. And not as a sign of luxury, but as a way to survive, and even more, to keep on flourishing as an urban society. And if we want to keep our city attractive and accessible, we need to adopt a different approach to mobility, an approach which, by the way, should not just be about traffic, but has to be integrated in a more energy-saving society, in a more circular economy, in the development of attractive and high-quality public spaces. And as an example of this approach in our city is the new center I already mentioned, the area around Central Station. It is, so to speak, the heart of the Netherlands, used every day by about 300,000 travelers, 19 million a year. And even in this urban area, development focuses on being a city, but no less on green spaces, health, and sustainability. And how do we achieve this? To mention just a few examples, by creating more space for pedestrians and cyclists, while arranging parking facilities in the city's outskirts, by creating lively shopping areas, and by planting trees even on a newly constructed passageway across the Central Station's railway tracks. And the same approach is visible in several of our town quarters. Various streets have been or are being redesigned to create more space for cyclists and pedestrians, and also, by the way, for other activities that are beneficial for local economy. Because this space can also be used to have, say, an outdoor coffee or tea or even a Heineken. By focusing on the way people can be nudged to good behavior, for instance in the area of sports and culture, instead of dictating extra regulations. Nudging. By nudging, we not only create more attractive public spaces, but also encourage a change of mobility choices and safer traffic behavior. Other mobility measures applied in our cities are the use of electric vehicles, including boats, to deliver goods and pick up waste in the city center. The old diesel trucks, vans and cars are prohibited from entering the historical city center, thus creating the Netherlands' first fully low-emission zone, with reduced traffic emissions of 30% as a result, as well as the country's lowest carbon dioxide emission per inhabitant. By expanding the possibilities of car sharing and the use of electric vehicles, air quality can be improved even more and space can be used even more efficiently. And now that I'm talking about space, ladies and gentlemen, if there is a space-saving way of transport, one example of that, the best example of safe spacing, is using the bicycle. Not everyone understands the Dutch passion for cycling, and I'm aware of that. But it's a fact that Utrecht is one of the greatest bicycle cities of the world, number 2 after Copenhagen in Denmark. Utrecht, where most children learn to ride a bike before their 4th anniversary, where even mayors go to work by bike. My own parents, 81, 84 years old, still ride their bikes with pleasure, although with low entry. The city of Utrecht even counts more bicycles than inhabitants. Daily, more than 100,000 cyclists roam through our streets. And this has at least one consequence I can't leave unmentioned. We had the first serious bicycle traffic jams in the Netherlands. But also, express services provider DHL is piloting in Utrecht a new city hub concept with cargo bicycles for inner city deliveries. Each city hub replacing up to 2 standard delivery vans with an equivalent yearly carbon dioxide saving of over 16 tons. Just another illustration of the healthiness and effectiveness of cycling as a means of transport and the importance of cycling facilities as a contribution to healthy urban living. In Utrecht, cycling highways have been constructed to accommodate our cyclists in order to lead them to the available parking spaces, and we use for that an electric parking route system. And besides, we're creating a 3-story underground bike parking facility near Central Station with a capacity of 12,500 bicycles. And when it's ready, it will be the world's largest bicycle shed. Apart from the unexpected innovative aspects of the software needed to lead the cyclist to the available parking spaces, because you have to find and to be able to find your bike back. The role that the governments of the city and region of Utrecht have to play in this field, ladies and gentlemen, varies according to the circumstances. Sometimes we need to set the agenda. Sometimes we need to encourage, to direct, to facilitate, to regulate and organize, and finally, even to execute. And it's not always easy. It takes a lot of effort from everyone involved to share goals and to speak the same language. At least in recent years, the workers of our mobility department have made a huge turn. More than ever, they cooperate with their urban and healthy development colleagues, with our citizens, with our local knowledge institutions, private companies, specialized startups, and other innovators in the field of urban mobility. It's a partnership to which we think there is, as a basic approach, no alternative. We need everybody's experience, knowledge, and spirit of enterprise. In our view, it's the only effective way to support sustainable development goals. And the city of Utrecht was very happy to be awarded last year the country's most inspiring global goals city, because it confirmed that we are on the right track. And that's why it's such a great honor to present here in Kaohsiung some of the inspiring and expert companies and institutions in this field that have their home base in Utrecht. Innovators I brought with me in my delegation to Taiwan because we're convinced that their ideas are of use for any developing city in the world. Innovators with ideas that are practical and workable, but also make use of state-of-the-art IT technology. There is, for instance, the Spring Lab company that developed the so-called flow system, showing to cyclists the best strategy to catch the green light. Flow measures a cyclist's speed about 120 meters before the traffic light and gives a speed advice shown on a pole near the cycling path. Some detail for explanation. Seeing a tortoise, you have to slow down to catch a green light. Thumbs up is the sign that you can continue at the same pace. If you see a hare, you'll have to accelerate. Finally, a cow means that this time, unfortunately, you will not be able to catch the green light at all. Pilots show that this is not just a playful or very funny idea, but it makes cycling safer and more relaxed, and it's an innovative contribution to eco-mobility and to healthy urban living. Another Utrecht company, Dienik, may be known by some of you already, since it supplies equipment for the Kaohsiung light rail. Their product is a vehicle communication system used to exchange information between equipment in vehicles and along the route. Vehicle identification is used for priority requests at intersections, route tracking, punctuality and regularity. And travelers get real-time information about delays. And the ultimate results are greater punctuality, more efficient traffic, less traffic jams, and happy customers. Sustainability can even be enhanced by improving battery charging procedures. And there are also possibilities to develop a broader smart traffic flow system like the so-called intelligent green waves and the safe guidance of emergency services. The third inspiring example I would like to mention is Robin Berg and We Drive Solar. Yesterday, Robin explained the system during his own lecture. In brief, We Drive Solar has the ambition to make smart, 100% clean mobility available for everyone. The idea is that cars store and use locally produced solar energy, not inconsiderably reducing emissions. But that's not its only remarkable and innovative feature. Combined with car sharing, it will also save space. A subject where other Robin, will speak about later. Because of its potentialities, the Utrecht We Drive Solar project is supported by General Electric and by the car manufacturers of Tesla and Renault. For them, the Utrecht project serves as a living lab for the development of new technologies, adding to every future car a made in Utrecht technological touch. Please allow me to summarize briefly my lecture, which was a great joy to convey. By putting health at the heart of our urban development, we created a value-based strategy and purpose for the future of our city. Eco-mobility is an indispensable part of this. And a fundamental partnership approach enables us to pursue the ambition of healthy urban living with the knowledge, experience and creativity of all Utrecht people, companies and institutions, showing that it's again cities and their surrounding regions that are at the heart of urban solutions needed today. I'm convinced that the city of Utrecht and the region of Utrecht will be able to inspire international institutions, national and local partners to setting comparable frameworks for the coming years. Inviting every city in the world to come round for serious talk about mobility and the other challenges of present day's cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, for a wonderful speech. I was so happy to hear the initiatives, what you have taken. And then the cycle movement, I think that's a great innovative idea to showcase. Maybe Kaohsiung can look into that, like with so many vehicles coming up now. We have, again, another inspiring speaker, Robin Chase. She is the founder of the ZipCar. Robin Chase is a transportation entrepreneur, and she is also the co-founder and former CEO of ZipCar, the largest car-sharing company in the world. Buzzcar, a peer-to-peer car-sharing service in France, now merged with Drivey, and she's also GoLoco, and an online ride-sharing community. She's also the co-founder of Veniam, a vehicle communication company, building the networking fabric for the Internet of the Moving Things. Robin lectures widely, has been frequently featured in the major media, and has received many awards in the areas of innovation, design, and environment, including the Times 100 Most Influential People, and also the Fast Company of the Fast 50 Innovators, and Business Week Top 10 Designers. Robin is graduated from Wellesley College and MIT's Solon School of Management, and was a Harvard University Loeb Fellow, and received an honorary doctorate of design from the Alliance Institute of Technology. May I ask Robin to take the floor?
Hi, it's my great pleasure to be here. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to talk today about my fear and optimism about the future. And since I want to end with optimism, I'm going to start with fear. So the first few minutes are bad, and then it's going to get worse, and then we will start talking about the future. And the reason I want to talk about this is I'm very passionate about this topic, and I want to put our work, which is important, into context. So I've been deeply worried about the implications of climate change and also autonomous vehicles. So starting first with climate. I'm going to show you a slide, and the question is, globally, is this year hotter or colder than the 20th century average for the planet? And you can see that if you've been born since 1980, you have never experienced a cooler than average year. This is 2015, 2016, 2017. We've almost heated the planet by 1 degree Celsius already. And scientists are telling us that by 2100, if we do business as usual, the planet will be warmer by 5 or 6 degrees centigrade. If you're like me, what does that mean to warm a planet by 5 or 6 degrees? I had to do some research. The last time it was minus 4.5 degrees Celsius was the last ice age. Across North America and Europe was under glaciers and several miles of ice. And so my bed, I have to come over here to show you, this is the amount of ice over the city skylines. This is Boston, and my bed would be here under 1.5 kilometers of ice. That was 20,000 years ago and 4.5 degrees. So if you want to imagine what is it like to warm a planet by 5 and 6 degrees, it is more than the difference of me sleeping in Boston today and the last ice age. So this truly is terrifying and an existential threat. So my friend Christiana Figueres, who used to head the UN's efforts and that brought about the Paris Climate Agreement, she says, the infrastructure we will build over the next 3 years will determine the fate of humanity. This sentence is so shocking. I have to say it again. The infrastructure we build over the next 3 years will determine the fate of humanity. This sentence, when I first heard it, it is tattooed in my heart and in my brain, and I think about it every day. And this is the work that all of us are doing. We are building that infrastructure. So now I'm going to get the story even worse, and then we will come out better. So this is a little video that goes by very quickly.
Self-driving cars could make cities more livable, sustainable, equitable, and just. Fully automated self-driving cars will be available for sale in cities by 2020. They have very different economics than our current cars, and so won't fit in well with today's rules of play. I see two distinct possibilities for our automated car future: heaven or hell. We get to choose. Forward-thinking leadership is going to make all the difference. We get hell by taking a wait-and-see approach. In this future, people buy AVs instead of today's cars. For trips, once you get to your destination, instead of paying for parking downtown, it'll be cheaper to have your empty AV circle the block or drive back home. The same is true for stores. It could be cheaper to have a drugstore car drive to customers than to pay for retail space downtown. Today, 75% of all cars on the road have one occupant, the driver. In the future, as we add more cars operating with their different economics, 50% of the cars will have no people in them, running low-value errands or avoiding parking. Meanwhile, all the taxi, bus, shuttle, and truck drivers will lose their jobs. We'll also lose about 60% of our tax revenue that finances road infrastructure, because AVs are electric, don't park, and don't get parking tickets. Our roads and bridges get a whole lot worse. We definitely don't want the hell scenario. We get heaven by taking a proactive approach. Over 1 million people in U.S. cities are already car sharing. And in San Francisco, 50% of the people using ride-hailing apps now share their trips with another passenger who is a stranger. Instead of spending $9,000 a year on your own car, when we combine car sharing and ride-hailing and buy a seat in a shared autonomous vehicle, we can get door-to-door transport at the speed of private car travel for the cost of a subway ticket. This transforms people's access to opportunity. Car sharing eliminates the need for parking. Ride sharing reduces congestion. We will only need 10% of the cars we have in cities today, even at peak times. No more on-street parking, no more parking garages. If most of the AVs in cities are shared cars in which people can share trips. We can widen sidewalks, plant trees, put in bike lanes and benches. We can get rid of parking lots and build affordable housing, or public parks, or whatever. Establishing the criteria and priorities for newly available public land will be critical to making sure communities get what they need. We could also reduce air pollution and CO2 emissions as we move from gas to electric power for our cars, but only if we demand that this new incremental electric energy use be renewable. Happily, electric AVs will pay their fair share for road and bridge repair because we will have made and created new user fees that apply to them. We'll discourage empty zombie cars and make it more expensive to drive than to park. But wait, what about all those people who used to drive, repair cars, pump gas, design, and build cars for a living? They worked hard and their jobs disappeared almost overnight. We need to make sure that people can diversify their income with benefits that are portable and apply no matter how few hours you work. And we need to start piloting basic income. So if we want heaven and not hell, we have to start working together to get the right laws and regulations in place now, especially for the first cities that set the example. Just as your head is reeling from the impact and potential for self-driving cars, realize that this is just the tip of the big automation iceberg. Automation delivers enormous productivity gains without the associated labor. It's like making honey without the worker bees. How will we distribute this new kind of honey? Automation gives us reason to reconsider how, why, and where we tax, and to think anew about what kind of world we want to live in. So let's talk. Please contact me.
So, when I've been talking to people in the last year and a half about self-driving cars coming to their cities, I get 3 responses. It's irrelevant to my city. That's really far away. Or it's not going to happen in my city for decades. Or pilots are happening right this minute in my city, right now. As I've been doing this work, what I realized is I didn't want to argue about whether it was happening in 3 years or in 30 years. That's not the question. What I realized is we can get to autonomous vehicle heaven only by fixing now the problems that we currently have in our current transportation hell. So it doesn't matter what you think about the self-driving car future, we still need to fix these problems. And if we fix these current problems, we will get to the heaven side. So for the last 4 months, and you guys all have a copy of this in your bags, I'm not going to open this up, a little poster that is the principles for shared mobility principles for livable cities. And what was remarkable about this 4 months of effort was that all of these big transportation and city NGOs and experts around the table could come up with 10 things that they all agreed, every one of us, that these were priorities. And 10 things is too many to share with you. You all have it in your bags. I'm just going to bring some highlights of that forward. So the first is that we need to transition. Here are the 4. Let me just keep going. There's 4 of these. And these are the ones I'm going to talk about that I want to highlight, 4 of these 10. So we're going to transition to zero emission. We need to encourage efficient use of space and assets, and the mayor talked a lot about that. Seek fair user fees across all modes. And we need to deliver public benefits via open data. So I'm going to go through these 4. So number 6 happens to be transition towards zero emissions. I just wrote to remind you, I told you some terrible things, but right now, today, polluted air delivers us 7 million premature deaths every year. 50% of those are linked to transportation. These are priorities. We need to work on these things. So we have to, how do we transition? We start with intensively used vehicles. Instead of arguing about every car on the road, let's argue about the ones that put the most distance and the most pollution in the air. So we start with our buses and taxis and utility service trucks and delivery, and we will also have goals for all vehicles. And if we do those things, when autonomous vehicles come, the shared ones will be zero emission also. So I don't have to say when autonomous vehicles come, they must be zero emission, because we already would have done that for these intensively used vehicles. Number 3, encourage efficient use of space and assets. There are 1.2 million vehicle deaths every year, and we know a lot of those deaths result from high speed and also bad infrastructure that lets people go too fast or mixes pedestrians and cyclists. This is a cartoon that I found that I love. This is what our lives feel like, doesn't it, now? That we are walking on our little tiny spaces in cities that are built for us. Obesity linked to lack of physical activity is 2.8 million adults deaths per year. So we need to change the priority, who gets what space in cities. This is a slide, these are famous slides, I like this one a lot. Look at this crowded road, oh my God, let's build another road on top. No, this is how many people are actually in those cars. Let me just go back because it's such a beautiful, decongested road that we all have seen. This is what it really looks like. And yes, a couple cars have 2 people in them. 70%, 1 person. This is a very famous slide in the transportation sector. I hope you've seen it before. The space required to transport 60 people by car, by bus, by bike. Yes, we know these things. As we think about the future of technology, I found this on Twitter. Here's by car, here's by Uber, here's by autonomous vehicle. If we don't do any sharing, we get the same thing. If we don't ask for clean cars and shared vehicles, we get the same thing. What is the point of this technology if it's not improving our lives? So this is from Bogota, Colombia. The way we do today, 1 passenger in all those cars, and yes, there's some buses carrying 30 people that are mixed up with all the cars going slowly. And so they've made Transmilenio, and they have, the special bus rapid transit and 140 people passing. But we still have 3 or 4 lanes of traffic with single occupancy vehicles. It is ridiculous. Here's a photo that was taken in San Francisco just last week by my friend. This is Market Street, 3 lanes. They've now put 1 lane for shared transport, moving 50 people by bus, 1 lane for cycling, 20 people moving, and 1 lane for private cars that are only getting 6 cars per block. And so they've completely transformed the space. Everyone should be doing this everywhere. And then when we have autonomous vehicles, if they're going to be driven by a single person, they're going to have to go into that little tiny lane by themselves. We need to give more space to people who are traveling cleanly, and more space. This is near my daughter's house in Brooklyn. We also park, we shouldn't be having cars because they get parked 95% of the time, and so it's very dangerous for cycling for her. So I just want to talk a moment about ZipCar. What ZipCar did so fantastically was it showed the world that, yes, it is absolutely true that shared vehicles take out a lot of, people want to use them. It's a viable business model. It reduces CO2 emissions. And so today, ZipCar has 1 million people sharing 13,000 cars around the world. Each car replaces 13 personally owned vehicles. This is a highly researched number for well-used car sharing. So almost 2 million cars ZipCar has taken out of city streets. But I wanted to make these numbers feel very personal. I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. 25% of Cambridge residents are ZipCar holders. There's about 200 ZipCars parked there, which means 2,600 fewer cars. And this is what is really shocking to me, is ZipCar was launched in 2000, they don't have the data, but between 2003 and 2026, there has been a 22% decrease in car ownership in that city. That is a remarkable number. Number 7, seek fair user fees across all modes. This one really, really bothers me, that we continue to argue about taxis and argue about buses, and then we still let people drive their own cars by themselves on roads. It is a crazy thing. We have such weak and wrong and unfair pricing, and you guys all know this. It's time to stand up to this. So in many countries, mine in particular, perhaps not yours, our gas tax definitely does not cover the cost of infrastructure, so we need to make road user fees that cover costs. We need to have the honest price of parking. What does it actually cost to park a car in this very valuable curb space in these dense urban areas that we let cars park? It's crazy. We need to be charging curb access fees. Pollution and air quality fees. We continue to not do this. It's called a carbon tax. Yes, we have to do that because right now we're not paying for pollution, and it's ridiculous that we're not doing it. And then congestion pricing. Some cities have taken up, and we must necessarily do congestion pricing now before autonomous vehicles come. It is the only thing that's going to curb their use. So there was an analysis in New York City recently about the e-hailing. It's called TNCs in the United States, which is like Uber. And they did this. New York City is the only country in the world, and then San Francisco second, where they could get the actual origin, destination, timing data for all of the taxis in the city. And what they found in New York was that there was a net increase of 31 million trips, 52 million passenger miles over the last 3 years, the addition of 600 million passenger miles, and increased congestion. You can see it had this huge impact, regardless of what Uber was saying. It was a huge impact. And I realize this is hard to see, but what was shocking is that this is neutral, and the number of buses has dramatically increased, the number of ridership on buses and subways, and you can see it all got taken up by these e-hailing services. So people are taking Uber instead of taking the subway. And why? Because they can go for free on the road because we don't charge congestion pricing. So the solution is not to ban e-hailing or taxis, and it's not to tax it in some crazy one-off way. The solution is to have fair user fees across all modes, to make that the rule. The rule is we have to have fair user fees, and I think it needs to be per square meter of vehicle. And right now, we talk about how hard it is to do congestion pricing. Uber, with surge pricing, has introduced the idea of congestion pricing. Surge pricing is congestion pricing, and right now that money is going to a private company instead of to the government. And if the government got that money, we could be using it to improve our sustainable transport modes. This one is another, I've just been thinking about technology. There's something called the high occupancy vehicle lanes, and sometimes in the US they could say you could pay to travel in that high occupancy lane. And it used to make me so mad because it was rich people. Rich people could get into the lane by themselves and travel. And they were called Lexus lanes because of this, and I hated the idea of them. But today, because we have smartphones and these ride-hailing apps, it is no longer, I think, such a terrible thing, because people, if we started making urban high-occupancy vehicle lanes, we can now enable shared vehicles with 3 and 4 passengers to go quickly through the city, and yes, you can pay for it because poor people can also get in that lane. Just to say that when autonomous vehicles come, if we do this, cities will be losing so much parking revenue. Parking is the way that we curb cars in cities today that only works when you own a car and when you have to drive and drop a car. With self-driving cars, parking is no longer a management tool. So we have to start transitioning to having people pay for pickup and drop-off and delivery at curbs so we don't lose money. And if we do congestion pricing, when autonomous vehicles come, we won't have this drama, which is gigantic, of zero occupancy vehicles, because we will be charging people what it costs to take up space in our cities at peak times. Lastly is this deliver public benefits via open data. The infrastructure of our future includes a digital infrastructure. And today we have this diversity of vehicles on our streets. We need the future to include a continuum of shared vehicles. But the problem is that transportation networks definitely tend towards monopolies. Because the network benefits, everyone wants to belong to that network. When you're a monopoly, even regulated ones, you completely don't innovate, which is why taxis never innovated when smartphones came. It took an outside industry, an outside person, company to say, okay, we're going to do smart things with smartphones and make getting a taxi easier. And global monopolies also exclude, as we are seeing today, small local companies and the possibility of startups. So I'm very anxious that our future does not include transportation monopolies. The way to make transportation monopolies not happen is to have standard open data. So we need to get require standard open data for shared transportation. This is what ensures competition and interoperability. So in metros and subways, Google invented something called GTFS that works, but we need to start doing it on shared rides, and I'm working with an NGO called OTP that's beginning this work, but this is a critical piece of our future. And then lastly, I'll just say quickly that we need to pass laws that say automated vehicles must be shared in our cities. So I want to conclude. Infrastructure is destiny. Infrastructure is destiny. When we build highways, we get roads, we get cars, and we get people who don't walk because we built these fast things. Right now, 1 in 6 people, 1.3 billion people, remain in extreme poverty, and the single largest barrier to escaping poverty is access to high-quality transportation. We really need to improve access. I want to leave you with, let's create the world we want to live in. I feel every day, and particularly right now as an American, don't you feel overwhelmed by the terrible things that are happening in this world? Right now, you guys are transportation leaders, and you can do something about the transportation part of this problem. And so I want to encourage you to realize in your life, this is what you are experts at and where you have a voice, and we all have to work really hard on improving our piece of this puzzle. We are not without power in this sector. This is where we do have power. And so it's not just create the world that you want to live in, it's to create the world that we can live in because of climate change bearing down on us. So thank you. That's all. Bye.